Hi, in this section we shall cover interest on capital. This video will cover the first 2 points. The first point being the rate of interest on capital, and the second point being how to calculate the amount of interest on capital when additional capital has been introduced and also capital has been withdrawn. Let's go to the first point, the rate of interest on capital. Interest on capital is allowed as per the rate which is specified in the partnership deed. So whatever is specified in the agreement between the partners, interest on capital is allowed at that rate. Where there is no information or where there is no partnership deed, no interest on capital is to be allowed to any partner. I'll illustrate this by means of an example. A and B are partners in a firm and have capitals of rupees 1 lakh and rupees 2 lakh on 1st April 2018. We are asked to calculate the interest on capital for the year ended 31st March 2019 when the case 1 says the rate of interest on capital is agreed at 10% per annum and case 2 says there is no partnership deed. Now, as we just learnt, in case 1 we can allow interest on capital to A and B at 10% per annum, but however in case 2, since there is no partnership deed, no interest on capital is to be allowed. Now going back to case 1, the interest on capital for A is on 1 lakh at 10%. We need to allow it for the whole year, and consequently interest on capital for A is 10,000, whereas interest on capital for B, 2 lakh into 10% for the full year is equal to rupees 20,000. And in case 2, since there is no information and no deed, no interest on capital is to be allowed to any partner. Let's go to the second point. How do we calculate the amount of interest on capital when there is additional capital and or withdrawal of capital? There is a very easy formula for calculation of interest on capital when there is additional capital introduced and also capital withdrawn. We need to allow interest on capital on the opening capital for the full year. For each and every item of additional capital introduced, we need to add the interest on capital on such additional capital, but we should do so only for the period that additional capital remains in business. That is from the date in which the capital was introduced up to the end of the accounting period. And we should subtract interest on capital on the capital which is withdrawn from the date on which the capital has been withdrawn till the end of the accounting period. I will illustrate this by means of an example. A and B are partners in a firm having capitals of rupees 1 lakh and rupees 2 lakh respectively as on 1st April 2018. A introduced additional capital of rupees 50,000 on 1st October 2018 and also withdrew rupees 20,000 from his capital on 1st January 2019. B did not introduce or withdraw any capital. Calculate the interest on capital for A and for B for the year ended 31st March 2019 at 10% per annum. We'll deal with A first. The details of A are: at the beginning of the year, the opening capital is rupees 1 lakh. Additional capital introduced by A, rupees 50,000 on 1st October 2018, and capital withdrawn by A on 1st January 2019, rupees 20,000. So as what we've learned previously, we'll give interest on capital at 10% on the opening capital for the full year. So we get the amount as rupees 10,000 first, on 50,000 for 6 months at 10%. Why 6 months? Because from 1st October 2018 when it was introduced up to 31st March 2019. Since it's additional capital, this amount will be added. And on 20,000 for 3 months, we'll subtract the interest on capital. This is because the capital is withdrawn and we are not going to give interest on capital on this amount. And the 3 months we arrived at because on 1st January 2019 it was withdrawn up to 31st March 2019. So it's rupees 10,000 plus on additional capital 2,500 minus on the capital withdrawn rupees 500. Therefore interest on capital for A is rupees 12,000. As far as B is concerned, B did not introduce or withdraw any capital. So we'll give him interest on capital at 10% on the opening capital for 1 year, which is rupees 20,000. Therefore interest on capital for B is equal to 20,000. In the next upcoming video, we will do a few sums on calculation of interest on capital when there is additional capital introduced and also capital withdrawn.